Welcome, everybody. And on behalf of the Metropolitan College, Metropolitan Study Group of the Metropolitan College of the SRIA, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Sheen Towers, and I am currently the Director of Studies for the Metropolitan College, and therefore this study group. And today we have Frater Mario, who is joining us from Italy. Actually, no, you were in Paris, I heard.
No, I'm in Milan. I'm in Milan.
Oh, you are in Milan.
Yeah.
I beg your pardon. Sorry, I misunderstood.
Yes.
Somebody from earlier. So, Frater Mario is going to be giving a talk on Francesco Saverio Geminiani,
Geminiani, yes.
The first Italian Freemason. So, over to you, Frater Mario, all yours.
Oh, thank you. So thank you very much. First of all, thanks Shane, and thanks to the Societas Rosicruciana in Anglia, because they gave me this opportunity to celebrate the 1300th anniversary of the first Italian Freemason, who was the Italian musician Francesco Saverio Geminiani. And it's very interesting starting speaking about about this figure, because people think it's a story of a musician between the end of the 7th century and to the 18th century, and with what happened afterwards, starting from the last period of Baroque music. And this is before the Enlightenment. But this is not only the story or biography of a musician, of course, but it's strictly related to the history of Freemasonry and the fact of that, especially during the 18th century, what was the role of Freemasonry itself in the history of music, the European history of music. So there was, just to make you understand, for those who are not interested, they don't know so much about history of music, Haydn, Mozart, Cherubini, and Geminiani and Gluck were Freemasons. And if I have to say a sort of list of musicians during the 18th century who were Freemasons or directly or indirectly influenced by Freemasonry, well, it's going to be a very, very long list. So Geminiani has a peculiarity, not only because he's a musician, but he was the first Italian who was the first was formed as a first Freemason. Anyway, I wanted to introduce my work regarding three aspects of his life that can be of interest in those of the audience. First of all, of course, is a sort of short bio, and the second thing is focused on his initiation, which is, of course, the bulk of this talk. And third is a sort of touch of mystery, if we want to say something that can be very interesting for the audience, regarding his death and a mysterious manuscript, which was stolen to him, and it is said that produced his death in Dublin in 1762. So, to start up, a premise. This is something that is very important when we have to deal with his life, Francesco Saverio Geminiani. The life and works of Geminiani are fragmentary and complex, and as such, they can be sometimes contradictory or even incomplete. The uncertainties surrounding several episodes of his life, such as his arrival in London, his time in Paris or in Holland, or his death in Dublin due to the sorrow of losing a manuscript which nothing is known, to name just the most significant events, it is the most notable feature of this account. The same can be spoken about the initiation into Freemasonry during a time when Masonic movement was gaining social prominence as a cultural phenomenon, as reflected by the very name of the lodge where Geminiani was initiated, the Philo Musicae et Architecture Apollini, can be fully understood in conjunction with the ascension to the throne of the Hanoverians and the political landscape of that era. We will see afterwards, because this is one of the focus of the talk, is precisely a specific date of the English history. Indeed, there are very few written sources, aside from his published works, of course, from which we could derive absolute certainty about the facts concerning the life of this Italian musician. This is very important to say beforehand, before starting the entire venture, because there are very contradictory sources. I'm trying to summarize in few dates the life of this man. He was born, and this is something we know because we have the baptism certificates on December the 3rd, 1687. Okay, we know this because December the 3rd, 1687, is the day of Saint Francis Xavier. And this is the reason why he was christened 2 days after. We have the certificates, December the 5th, 1687, with the name of Francesco Saverio, he named after the saint. He came from a family of musicians, and he started with two very important, especially very important virtuosi of violin, Carlo Ambrogio Lonati of Milan and Arcangelo Corelli. I mentioned Alessandro Scarlatti as one of his teachers, but this is the very first thing that is quite exciting regarding and the mystery of the life of Geminiani. The role of this Alessandro Scarlatti, how he got in touch with him. Okay, it's very easy to say that he met him in Naples when he went to Naples in 1708. But the name of Scarlatti will come again during the conversation. So in the first phase, we can call it the Italian one, when he was very young, and could be from 1708 to 1714. And he lived and studied mainly in Lucca, his birthplace, Rome, where he studied, Naples, and Venice. Venice could be said that he was there before, just few moments before his departure to go to London. And then we have the year 1714, which is very important. Geminiani moved to London, where he lived for about 20 years. Then we know that he lived between London, Dublin, when he had the chance to go and being an important master there in music. And for a certain period of time, he lived between Paris, the Netherlands, and around this. This is very difficult to know something about this. The 1750 return to London. For instance, we know that he was in the Netherlands in 1746 and 1747 because there are 2 or 3 letters which were sent from the Hague in those days, 46, 47, and which are at the British Museum. So, sorry, to the British in the archives of the British Library. Then we have again another period of time where he was in Paris, and eventually in 1759 he was in Dublin, but he was already an old man, and he died on September the 14th, 1762 in Dublin, where he was buried. So this is a sort of scheme, which is very uncertain, even certain dates, regarding his life. As a musician, professional musician. But now I want to focus, and this is the very first thing I wanted to stress, because it's also part of the entire idea I got. Because again, it's no use, in my opinion, starting to speak about a long list of dates, operas, works. This is a talk to show off also something could be very interesting and attractive to the audience. So 1714 is very important because on August the 1st, George von Hanover became King of Great Britain and Ireland. So he was the first British monarch of the House of Hanover. The House of Hanover is still ruling. King Charles, he belongs to the House of Hanover. Okay, the surname was changed by Lloyd George during the First World War, but this is the origin, his ancestors. But at the same time, in 1714, Geminiani went to London. His arrival was solicited and sponsored, and this is very interesting, and it's something that we know for certain, by Baron for Kilmansegg, who was the husband of the Countess of Darlington, Sophia Charlotte von Kilmansegg, who was the half-sister of the king. And this is very interesting, he was probably introduced to Geminiani by the Scarlattis, that is to say, father and son, during a visit to Venice. Geminiani's arrival in London aligned with the Hanoverian rule, suggesting a strategic move that positioned him as a bridge between the Italian and English elites, leaving unsolved questions on the Stuart-Hanover relations. The role of Geminiani makes think or may imply that others and more complex project and relation were the main reason of his arrival in London. Well, explanation of this statement. This young man is a very talentuous violinist and musician. He is sponsored, well known, appreciated by a very important family of musicians, the Scarlatti, and of Naples. And all of a sudden, after this meeting, probably that maybe took place in Venice. Venice is very important for many relation between northern, in those days, northern and southern Europe. But this is to cut short the story. Then it was organized, it was literally introduced, and he arrived immediately in London with the greatest honors. Think about that. In 1716, he produced one of his first sonatas, which was dedicated to the Baron for Kilmansegg himself. This is to make you understand the strong tie that was existing between his patron and Geminiani. Second thing, we know that there was the new dynasty ruling over England, the throne of St. James, and with a monarch who couldn't speak a single word of English. He could speak only German, you know. And this was also formed to reorganize completely the House of Hanover when they settled in England. So they have to organize many implications. One of these implications was clearly a cultural policy that cultural relations that they wanted to establish. So, of course, these monarchs brought certain parts of the culture from the original land in Germany, and of course they wanted to establish other links and relations they already had. And this is something that is lying behind the meeting between Geminiani, the Scarlattis in Venice, with this exponent of the Hanover families, the House of Hanover, for Baron von Kilmansegg. So the main reason of his arrival in London is also like as being a sort of link, you know, having an assignment which was not only from the cultural side. This is the other chapter I wanted to express is the short life, very short life, probably less than 3 years, not more, of the Filomusicae et Architecturae Pollini Doge, the Society of Lovers of Music and Architectures to Apollo. So this is very interesting because this is related to the history of the birth of Freemasonry. This lodge was existing starting from 1724, and it stopped, you know, abruptly on March 1727. This is something we know for one simple reason. We have the notes, and which are at the Freemason Hall Library. I consulted. You will see some part of that. I took pictures, and thanks to Brother Hasu, I hope he's watching, and this was made last August with a huge important support of the staff of the Freemason Hall Library. I have to thank them. Anyway, what happened? This lodge was established outside the Constitution. Sorry? Hello? Hello? Can you hear me? Okay, so I go on.
Sorry, Mario, I'm sorry, I just realized what was happening. There was somebody who I've just muted.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. So anyway,
I'm sorry about the interruption. Please go ahead.
No problem. No problem. What happened? This lodge was established with basically no rules, what we call the Constitution 1723. And by studying the biography and the life of Geminiani, I found out also what happened before and soon after 1717 and 1723, which are dates very well known by English Freemasons, But this lodge was completely out. It could have been also not defined as a lodge as we know today, or soon after, when the Constitution were very well established, because it was a group of amateurs who loved music. Music was a big thing in England soon after the end of the Second Revolution, the end of the 17th century and beginning of the 18th. So this was a very important, a big thing for people living in London. And they gather, they have concerts in private houses, and so on. And this is the background, the cultural background, the cultural environment, which was behind the establishment of this lodge. A group of people, all distinguished English people, they were businessmen, professional, they decided to gather to Queen's Head pub, which was very normal in those days, as we know that. I mean, the Grand Lodge was born in a pub, as we can call it a pub, and they were connected by the ideal of which is called Philo Musicae and Architetture, lovers of music and architecture. This is a Pythagorean concept, because music was strictly related to geometry and vice versa. This is very important. So it means that there was something behind this, that people who knew that what they were doing. And of course, you can also say, well, it could have been a group of motorbikers. I mean, yes, the answer could have been as such. We meet at the pub and then let's have a trip with our bikes. This is the idea. But Geminiani was the sole professional joining these structures, these lodge, considered a lodge, and he joined, and this is the problem, in 1724, 1725. So when you look at the minutes, what we have, the notes, you see that he was initiated, and people write in different sources, both in Italian and in English, on February the 1st, 1725. That is to say, 3 centuries ago. But you see also this mentioning, because this lodge, the Philo Musicae, was having these meetings and concerts, because they gathered and they played. Say, what did they do? So was it a typical lodge we had in mind as Freemason? I don't think so. But this is my personal opinion. That's all. So they decided, in any case, to form this form of club or lodge. And you can see at the left, your left of the screen, that there is the coat of arms. At the bottom, you can see Philo Musicae et Architetture Societas. And then you see the names and the coat of arms of all the founding members. I would love to draw your attention to the coat of arms, the shield you can see at the bottom on your right, which is completely blank, completely unfilled. There is nothing. Look at it. Afterwards, you can see up in the middle of the coat of arms, and you can see another shield, the same shield, completely empty, blank. It is written there, Francesco Saverio Geminiani. This is the blank is Geminiani's. He had no coat of arms, but at the bottom you can see, just over the word Apollini, you see dictator. This is very interesting and makes you consider that this lodge was not following the rules established in 1723 by the Fort, even though it was started in 1724, and then we will understand why. What happened? This group decided that for lifetime ad vitam, Geminiani would have been the sole dictator. Could be, I think, it could be director in modern terms of the musical studies of music, etc., because he was the sole professional there. This is something I have to consider implied, at least have implied that in fact it was the sole profession. So this is something very interesting of this lodge. You have also to know that by speaking with the staff of the Freemason library, I was told that there was this book with the collection. You will see now. Wait a moment. Now, yeah, you can see here. Dictator. This is text, but this is something I want to show you. Then we go back for that. These are notes, okay, in which is proved the name, etc. But what is very interesting is that these are the sole notes we have in 1724, 1725, up to March 1727. Afterwards, there are no notes up to other lodges, we're talking about other lodges, in the 60s of the 18th century. There is nothing. There is a complete blank void between 1727 and I think beginning of the 60s. This is to make it, it's very interesting, something that I found out I didn't know. When you start studying certain subjects, then you understand there are many other implications and things that you don't know. And that this is the point. So this Filo Musica d'Architettura Societas was a Masonic lodge. And it functioned as a musical club and Masonic lodge. But they focused heavily on musical performance. I here mentioned the records, and he was the sort of dictator coordinator. The sole director of studies, something like that. Something like a sort of ad vitam the director of studies in music, definitely. So what happened there? It started also. This is also what I found is very interesting. That the conflicts with the Grand Lodge established in 1717, and there was this conflict that led to declining membership under the 1723 Constitution. And the lodge closed abruptly in 1727. One thing we know, the only thing I could find out or realize is that some members did not want to be subject to the authority of the established Grand Lodge. Think about this. In 1717, 4 lodges founded the Grand Lodge. But already in 1724-25, the lodges could have been around 60. This is the idea that is behind definitely a form of organization and which lies behind the 1723 Constitution. Otherwise, it could have been a chaos. We are seeing, and this is witnessed by the time, that in 4, 5, 6 years, not more, there was an explosion of lodges. This is incredibly interesting, and I didn't know. Maybe many of you know this, but I didn't. And it was absolutely stunning. Geminiani remained, but now we do not know what happened afterwards because these are part taken from the library. Then you have number 10, Signor Francesco Saverio Geminiani, founder and then director, etc., etc., because they were directors and other functions which are not, I'm not, I don't know that I found out, perpetual director of the musical performances, as you can see, duties of as far for the music of the lodge are recorded. And then made in Queen's Head, Hall Street, Mason, February 24, 25, regularly passed fellow craft and master on May the 12th, 1725. And then he say, his name does not appear in any of the list exempt of the lodges, although minus space 6, and is stated with 6 other founders to have been member of lodge at Queen's Head. It means this. This is one of the paper I found with Azu, and where his name is clearly mentioned there among the other ones. And okay, this is very clearly Francis Saverio Geminiani. And these are
Raccontagli la mia
the
vicenda,
only.
che la sera prima sti stronzi mi hanno cancellato l'aereo.
Sorry, sorry. Could you switch off your microphone, please?
Go ahead, please. Sorry about that. I just muted them.
No, because they were speaking about aircraft cancellation. Anyway, the point is that this is what happened during those period of time, which was an explosion, a great explosion of Freemason lodges. This is very also interesting, something that I found out. Then you say, what happened to Geminiani? What did he do? And this is very interesting because we know that he received a sort of patent from the Grand Secretary of the Grand Lodge, and round about 1728, something like that, to establish a first lodge in Naples by the year 1730, something like that. But you have also to consider that this was the English system, Grand Lodge of England, but there were already other Grand Lodges organized in Germany, in France, and they were operating in Italy on different ways and in competitions, as we know, and so forth. So what is very interesting is that he probably established this link, and this lodge was La Perfetta Armonia, the perfect harmony in Naples, and this was connected to certain activities of a very important. This is very an understatement. Esoterist, alchemist, which was Raimondo, Prince Raimondo, and this man was the one who was the first Grand Master of a Grand Lodge established in Italy, in southern Italy. So this is clearly connected. I said at the very beginning that Geminiani had this link with Naples. He went there, he worked there, he met the Scarlattis, and the Scarlattis were absolutely connected to the top elite of what was the kingdom of Naples in those days. And then Geminiani goes to London, and immediately after that, he has an explosive career. He becomes a Freemason, and he earned a lot of money because we know that he also had troubles because he was a great collector of paintings, was fond of in art, and he made a hell of debit in that. But he was helped by the top establishment, the top families of the Kingdom of England. So it meant that he has very, very important connections. So it is the story related strictly to the history and development of Freemasonry, not only in England, as I showed, but also the way these the Freemasonry, the English Freemasonry, arrived in Italy. There are certain theories that say that He established a lodge in Lucca the year after he became a Freemason, 1726, but there are no evidence regarding this. I spoke to certain very important brethren who have made serious studies on Geminiani, who are from Lucca, and they confirmed this, but they said there is no evidence, otherwise it would have been published, as we know. But anyway, we know that this patent was important to establish a very important lodge in Naples, as it happened. We know also that there were German lodges working in northern Italy and in Naples as well, and in Rome. This is also another important thing. I simply said before, I wanted to show you because also this sentence is very important. Geminiani arrival in London aligned with the Hanoverian rule, suggesting strategic move that positioned him as a bridge between Italian and English elites, leaving unsolved questions on the Stuart-Hanover relations. So this is also very interesting. It was probably a sort of way to regulate relations with the Protestant English court of the Hanover and the Stuart, who were both in Paris and in Rome. This is something that is very fascinating to understand. We are talking about that Geminiani not only worked as a professional musician, a composer, but he had a role much more important than we may think. And this is the uncovered dark side of his life. Dark, that is to say, unknown, hidden, does not have bad side, but it's simply that is something that was completely hidden. And this is also strictly related to the loss of this story of mysterious manuscript, which was lost, stolen, and this is also linked because this is something I like. It's my personal opinion. That's all related to the end of life and this event, which is quite famous, the theft of this mysterious manuscript. Geminiani went back in 1759 to Dublin and remained there until his death, September 17, 1762. And it is speculated that his death was influenced, if not directly caused, by the theft of mysterious manuscript. We do not know what the content of the value of the manuscript, and it was never found. And there are plenty of theories, legend, do what you want, think what you want, regarding the disappearance of this manuscript. The story often revolved around actions and role of a maidservant at Geminiani's residence in Dublin. So they say this woman, this maidservant, stole the manuscript. This is something we know. But why is this? She put it to the bin dust. This could be something even reasonable. Or could have been the commission theft by a secret collector or something else. The maid's betrayal for revenge, the cursed manuscript scenario, which is also much more closer to Harry Potter, and the lost manuscript with secret revelations, that is to say, memoirs. Okay, the two main ideas are, one is a completely technical, related to musicology. It put a sort of all experience, all his studies in composition, in music, in violin, and music theory, and all his ideas of a life, of a lifetime into this manuscript. So this could have been a manuscript related to musicology. Use this word to describe what was all about. The other one, it could have been the lost manuscript with secret revelation, which were not only related to the theory of music, but it was Geminiani's memoir, in which he documented events, individual encountered through his life, and he met plenty of people at the highest level. We are talking about at levels of the crown. This is the situation, not only because of the Hanover court, but also in Naples, also in Venice. We're talking about the real elite of Europe in those years. This paper could have had the potential to compromise influential figures and political relationship at the highest levels. So, given Geminiani's close connection with the Northern court and other key figures in the political and musical landscape of the first half of the 18th century in Europe, this manuscript could have had significant consequences, revealing hidden alliances, rivalries, political intrigues over time. Of course, again, this is a scenario because we have nothing regarding this. But the sole fact that this manuscript was stolen, well, and if something is very important to Geminiani, especially as an old man, it means, and this is something we can, in my opinion, we can say, and is reasonable, it contains something very important. Of course, we don't know what was written, that is to say, only musicology or memoir. This is something that we don't know. This is not something we don't know at all. So this is also the tales of mystery regarding this man. So this is the end. We are coming to the end, but I found out this word, which is very interesting because it's also related to the ideals and the esoteric side of the Geminiani, fine senza fine, which means end without end, but is endlessness. This could be also given in English as endlessness. This is taken from Francesco Saverio Geminiani, Guida Armonica o Dizionario Armonico, being a short guide to harmony and modulation. This is precisely the exact text. Opera 10th, London, 1756. It is one of his last works in which he expresses his theories in music, and this is also related to the famous manuscript. Was this Guida Armonica simply an excerpt of much extended work he made? That is to say, the mysterious stolen manuscript? We don't know. At the end, we have this Ouroboros. The Ouroboros is described by Fine senza fine, and describing also his esoteric side as a Freemason. This is a bibliography, which is a work in progress because I'm expanding, as you may know, my studies on Geminiani. I think that the list you see could be easily doubled in few months, and this is the very another important thing. There was a presentation I made to thank, of course. This is Lucca Temple, the Temple of Lucca of Grand Oriente d'Italia, and this is the Lodge Francesco Saverio Geminiani. This is the worshipful master, and I have to say that he was extremely kind because I spoke for 45 minutes, and which was an extended version, of course. This English version must be something that can be understood by non-Italians, because then there are other implications related to not only the language. Language is a minor thing in that sense, but related to cultural background and historical background. I want to show off one thing in particular. As you can see in that pics, to the right, I am wearing the SRIA tie. This is something I wanted to do because I wanted to work on that. So again, this is also something very interesting during that day, that evening, November 13th, 2024. The Lodge Francesco Saverio Geminiani of Grand Oriente d'Italia gave me some documents, papers, books. I, in name and behalf of them, delivered and deposit on November 28th, 2024 to Museum Freemasonry and to the library. So thank you. This work would not have been possible without the help of Frater Asu, the hospitality of Francesco Geminiani Lodge, particularly its worshipful master, Lucio Pagliaro. I hope he is listening. Hello. During my visit on November, the staff of the Freemason Library and the Societas Rosicruciana in Anglia, which inspires and supports the study of many brethren, among them, very humbly, I myself. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Mario. That was wonderful. And I'd like, as is customary for these meetings, I'd like to open this up now.
Greetings, everyone. And Mario, I just mentioned the word and you took it upon yourself to create a whole presentation and a research base. So excellent. Well done. Congratulations. Very interesting character. And as we've spoken, the time frame during which he lived was a time frame of changes and turmoil in Europe, politics, religion, so much going on. And it is interesting how music sort of transferred from culture to culture without any boundaries. There was no political or religious boundaries to that. A couple of thoughts that as I said, we've talked about this, and there was a couple of things. You mentioned the lodge, architecture and music. Now I'm wondering why they combined architecture and music. What is there that the two had in common? Why not just a lodge of musicians, but why architects? And who were the architects that were involved in that creation of that lodge, who played a part in founding this lodge and creating a sort of quadrennium, of knowledge? Was there any others, the architects? Because you only mentioned one name, but who are the other members of that lodge?
So, first of all, Azu, in 1714, when Geminiani arrived, was before 1717, London was under construction. People don't. It's very difficult sometimes to remember this. London was completely burnt to ashes in 1666. So consider this, that they were reconstructing. And if we can figure out what Geminiani saw when he arrived in 1714, well, it is of course not what we can see today, but it was a huge place where they were rebuilding the entire structures, okay, after the Great Fire. So this is something that must be kept in mind. So you had architect, and the mastermind of this reconstruction was Sir Christopher Wren, who was a Freemason, who was both, because keep this in mind, he was both. He was operative and speculative. He was one of the last operative Freemason, okay? In fact, if you go nearby the city, you have Stonecutter Street over there. So you understand where they started working, constructing. This is another case. The idea of calling the music and architecture I mentioned before is related, probably, this is my humble opinion, to Pythagoras' ideas. Geometry is music and music is geometry, something like that. Nowadays is very, very banal to say, but in those days was a big thing. And not only at Pythagorean times, but even at the Geminiani's moment, consider another important thing. As well, London was under construction, violin was a new thing to be played. And the art of playing violin is by Geminiani. It was something completely new. And playing violin is playing geometry, is using geometry with three chords. And this is in few words, some some reflections on the case. But this is something that makes sense a lot, at least to me. There is a strict connection between geometry from Pythagoras, from Plato works, and music. They are strictly connected. So to me, there was nothing special in finding out that. What I found out as a Freemason was that those people were interested to gather not only for a ritual, or we don't know the ritual they applied, but they were performing. This is also interesting. We need to perform, and of course you need a musical director who was the dictator Geminiani, and this was something that probably happened because Geminiani was living in a very, very hectic society in those days. Very interesting. So, and this is the reason why he was involved. But at the same time, we have also to know and to keep in mind that Geminiani came into the main door, through the main door in London. It wasn't an immigrant who arrived, who made a fortune, blah, 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 blah. But he was introduced from the main door. This is another important thing that you must keep in mind. And this is something I wanted to, and I think I would love to go deep in this, because the other side, which is not the musical one, is that Geminiani was introduced by the top level of this counselor of the king. The new kings, the new house of Hanover, okay, the new monarchs there, they say we have to take certain decisions, which is absolutely normal. We do every day in our lifetime, and of course, big companies, states, etc., etc. In those days, it was absolutely the same. You have to organize a program. You need a program. You need, many other aspects to set up such a venture, especially in those days and with that background. Another thing that people don't sometimes forget is that, as I told you, probably London was a huge place where they were building like hell, in 1714. There is also to keep in mind that the relationship between the Stuart and the Hanover. This is something also very important to keep in mind and to think as to be settled. And in my opinion, it was settled. There were negotiations, so you need people to negotiate. I am a lawyer, as a business lawyer. I have the experience to stay in group of works and working groups, in which Asu does this, Mario does another thing. So you organize the work, to create a sort of an organized work to go to have negotiations in any kind of negotiation you do. Think at that level. The second thing is also other esoteric, which is not exoteric, but this is an extremely esoteric side. And we know, coming from certain environments where, what we say, call it before Freemasonry in Nepal. Absolutely. I think that the same cultural environment that determined, I use a word, a name that Giordano Bruno. I think that the same environment expressed also this link, the esoteric side of the link of Geminiani to London. This is something I have, in my opinion, but again, this is an idea I have, something that can be dug up, but it's very difficult because we have no documents. We know this very well. We belong to a society. This society has its own constitutions, rules, but the activity of its members, of course, are regulated, controlled, much more, of course, than in those days. But we know perfectly that everything may happen in group of people, because it's based on any kind of association like this one is based on natural law. And this natural law is made by nothing but human nature.
Thank you,
This is
Mario.
something related to this.
There's loads more we can talk about, but I'm sure there's others who would want to
You must help
share.
me. You are going to help me. You don't know yet, but you're gonna help me.
You blessed me and embarrassed me with giving me
No,
that.
you're great. You are great. You help me. No picture without us. Remember this. Keep this in mind.
Mario, I owe you a bottle of wine. Bless you. Cheers.
Yeah.
Mario, I was curious to know why he went to Dublin.
Sorry.
I'm curious to know why he went to Dublin, since he was very well connected within the monarchy of both countries. Dublin seems a rather odd choice.
No, again, this was also a consequence of 17th century, the history of Ireland in 17th century, especially with the Orangist period, like after the fact, the war, the Irish War in 1641, when there was the reconquest again of the rebellious Ireland, and there was a sort of process of normalizing Ireland with many other stories that ended only few years ago with Good Friday, so it was very troubled. I lived in Ireland, so I can tell you that Geminiani was appointed as a maestro di cappella, used this expression in Dublin. But being that the problem that he was Catholic, he said you have to turn to Protestantism to have this assignment. So he refused, and he said at the same time to the establishment that decided to appoint him, said, "Look, I have this other I forgot the name, but another musician, English musician. I think he was like the Securiel, probably a Huguenot. I think because he could have had a French surname. So yes, and he was appointed, but he was basically one of his best elect he had, and we have to say that he performed there, he remained there, and helped Geminiani when he was old when he finally returned back in 1759. But again, this is very interesting. Justin, I have to thank you because again, shows off that he was absolutely at the highest level. So he received an appointment from that establishment, introduced him to England. So they said, okay, there is that place to be, covered, and it's up again to the government. And the government said, I'm going to appoint Francesco Saverio Geminiani. This is to make you understand what happened. That's good. This is the reason why he arrived in Ireland. But regarding Ireland, again, there was the incredible trouble that they had during the 70th centuries and the process of normalizing Ireland. Again, because they were incredible during the English Revolution, 1648, 1688, 1641, and then and so forth, the period of Cromwell. And it was a continuous, a war of 1 century war, they wanted to normalize at any level.
Mario, do we have any records of how he was murdered or killed?
No, he died. We think again, he died of natural death. Could have been a stroke or an heart attack. He was 75, something like that. Yeah, something like that. He had an heart attack or brain stroke, something like that, like a sudden death. This is
so the stealing of the manuscript and his memoirs, if you wish, were a situation of circumstance rather than an opportunity to inflict a Masonic penalty or something like that for him disclosing the secrets of Masonry. That's what I was thinking in my mind.
Why not? And this is the reason why. And that's it. Thank you very much, Michael. This is something I may absolutely agree with you because there is nothing, we don't know anything. Your word is my word, it's absolutely the same. This is not 1 + 1 2, it's not 3. But this is something. But again, think about you cannot write about this.
Yeah.
You understand? Do you understand, Michael? Michael,
exactly.
Thank you very much because this is precisely what I thought. He made something, and above all, I repeat, above all, the man knew too much. So you needn't to kill him, you simply exclude progressively from the business, of music business. You perfectly understand me, okay? You simply progressively exclude him, as an old man, he's retiring, go to pension, blah, 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 go to Ireland, stay there, made some private concert, get money. But in the end, I think he was under control. I have to thank you, because otherwise the audience would have thought this Mario is crazy, he believes in, I don't know. But again, thank you for your question, because I can develop these. And the fact is, Michael, and he was under control. He knew a lot. And when we have this biography, I read different versions of biography. And one thing is, another important thing I want to say is that there is no coincidence in the different dates, different moment, different places. So, well, I mean, his private life is private life. We have to respect that. But never married, traveling around a certain area, which is also Masonically speaking very important. London, Paris, London, The Hague. And then something that is very difficult for us, for me, for you, keeping in mind what was the political and historical situation of Europe in 1714, 1723, etc., etc. But again, no doubt, this is impossible to write. In that sense, Michael, this could be the plot of a novel. When you can't write an essay, you write a novel. This is what I think. You write a story, a novel. And this is also related, for those who knows and follow the International Study Group of SRIA, my work on the life of Ioan Petru Culianu. And Michael, regarding the mysterious death, this was assassinated physically in Chicago in 1991. But this professor was assassinated, but to express certain theories, as the one you mentioned, there is a novel written in Italian, by the way, it's very funny. This Romanian professor killed in America, but there is an Italian who wrote a novel, and we don't know the guy who is this guy. But anyway, there have been also a pen name, but it's a novel. But the novel is your plot, my plot. You know what I mean? He was under control, Michael. He knew too much. I mean, think about it. This guy was close to the King of England. Okay? Full stop.
Yeah, I don't think that him knowing too much was the problem. It was the fact that he was writing it down. That's probably the reason why that document was stolen. That it was
Yeah, this is precisely what I mean. Yes, thank you for your reply, because it is exactly that. Of course, I can say Michael knows something very important, but remain a secret, sub rosa. But the point is completely different when you start writing down. Why is this? Probably Geminiani was abandoned by his patrons. This is very typical. In certain story, we have plenty of histories dating back even thousands of years, that when the patrons, are detaching or are leaving you, then there is this reaction, which is related also to the human nature of each of us. Thank you very much, Michael, because I couldn't listen. I couldn't state certain things that you helped me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. Thomas, thank you for your patience. Thomas, go ahead, please.
That's all right. Thank you very much for that.
Oh, my apologies, Thomas. I muted you accidentally. Go ahead.
No problem. Yeah, thank you very much for that. That was a really fascinating, in-depth look into this individual. The thing that stood out for me is that he lived in a time of incredible opportunity for thanks to international travel and the kind of sailing from place to place, but also for the time of for decoding almost the mysteries in plays, in music, in geometry. So it kind of almost ties in with the last what you've just been speaking about, and the suppression of knowledge that was there. So thanks to the international travel, we were getting tons of people into England, into London that we'd never seen before. And I noted on there that he was in London around the sort of early 18th century, which would have been when the essentially loads of information came over from China, and a library came over from China, and a lot of the circles, I imagine, that he was in, the intellectual elites almost, were called to London to help decode these Taoist and Taoist philosophies. So my question was, if there was the information out there, or if you may know the circles that he was involved with, because I think almost there's a bit of a code, late 17th, early 18th century. We've got some of the key players in not just Freemasonry but Rosicrucianism, and in the sort of esoteric upper degrees. If there was some sort of higher council that came to essentially step in and help with the demystification of mysteries.
Well, the answer is maybe, who knows? I mean, I'm sorry. In a short reply is who knows? The point is that we don't know. Again, what about the stolen manuscript? Again, this is my idea. Maybe there was a chapter that replying to your question. We don't know. And
because you said about the sort of the late 17th century, and obviously we had the sort of key players coming to London, establishing or preaching and talking about these mysteries, writing down philosophies, and then you've got a blank spot, which almost ties in with the suppression of knowledge, where they kind of said, hang on, too much is escaping here. We need to put a cap on it, put a lid on it, and then everyone disappeared. People went to Dublin, people went to Scotland, and almost left London and Masonry to sit in darkness. And then there was this, almost a revival in the early 18th century, especially around the sort of 1840s as well. So.
Yes, again, I mentioned before the written something that is also related. Bruno, I'm speaking about Giordano Bruno because he's a character I don't like, but I mean, I know that you know him. So, but that's just cut a long story short. Bruno, the Scarlatti's Neapolitan tradition and Geminiani's tradition is Pythagorean. The Italian tradition, Arturo Reghini, there is a book written by another member of SRAA, John Meek. He wrote a book on Arturo Reghini, was the last one of the Pythagorean, and is the Italian tradition. That's a fact, not the Platonic. It's different. It's split in two. The so-called Italian tradition is split in two. You have the real, genuine Pythagorean and then the Platonic one. But better to say Neoplatonic, which is different. Anyway, to reply to you, Geminiani in with harmonica, the art of playing violin, which are related to music theory, he indirectly arrived and introduced in England the Pythagorean system, because the sense of harmony and harmonic constructions, again, geometry and music, was strictly related to him. It was taught in that. He was better to say he was formed. When you say he started with Lonati, he started with Corelli. Yes, he played Corelli, blah, 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 blah. But who had all those men together, the common link? Okay, certain theory of music, good to know. And then what lies behind this, and which is precisely what you imply, what is your question. The question is always, as our international study group, as Freemasons, esoterists, to understand, okay, this is the exoteric side, high theory of music, great. But what else? What is behind? Which is also the question I just answered, before. Again, who knows? And the important thing of these groups, is that you can't write down in black and white, precisely what you said. Also, what you said, suppression of knowledge, which is a sort of, I call it censorship. It's a censorship, to 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 prevent, and to know. To a certain extent, I also understand these forms of, you call suppressions or censorship, call it what you want, because there are certain uh, themes, certain ideas that are not for everybody. This is very important. And this is the difference between an initiate and profane. Again, this is very important.
That's why lots of people were banned from owning a Bible. It's that censorship, that there were people that were not allowed to access above their station, almost, to be able to transcend. The self-transcendence was not allowed to everyone.
Yes, and there is a reason for that, again, because it was not for everybody. And this is also the origin of many other troubles that were in Europe. But the basic, you got the point. Yes, Thomas, you got the point. You can't, I mean, this is my opinion, which is against also my political views as a young man. But it's impossible to say you are like me. One is one. No, it's false. We are not equal, in the sense that afterwards, and this is, I'm sorry, it's not elitarian. I mean, I have a social democratic background, if you want to know, because this is to make you understand I'm not a typical kind guy. But the point is, Thomas, at a certain esoteric level, you need to be qualified, which is absolutely logical. I am a lawyer. Okay, I go to university. Okay, so since I went to the same university where there is the School of Medicine, now I say to you, I'm a doctor. Would you like to be treated by me? That's it.
Mm. And there's also the fact that, I think there's a quote there that says, a person who has pondered the questions of the universe finds the moral laws of society, boring almost, or hard to stick by, because it was a case of, I think there was a lot of information that was coming over from different countries that were teaching, the general population that they weren't the wave, they were the ocean, and that anyone could transcend their own limitations. And then there was that, like you said, censorship, I say suppression, almost an extermination of people that wanted to do that themselves. Self-enlightenment was squashed. And I think that there's a lot of connection there with the Taoists and the Taoism, with the people that came in from China, and music theory as well. I think the Scarlatis were really instrumental in assisting the travel from these delegates from different countries for music.
For example, correct.
Yes,
That's a fact. They were linking.
There were, mystical plays, mystical plays everywhere from Russia to Poland that were given to the general population, that were just stamped out, and you cannot find them anywhere. And it's the same thing, that we had a wealth of information and knowledge, and people were scared. People were scared from what that would do. And it was a tight belt pulled around the neck of Freemasonry. Everything was kind of shut off, and I think that's done damage in the long run, possibly. Or it may not have been the right time to release that, and we're trying to dig through the what's left from the past, and what we've kept and what's not been lost or stolen, to try and put these pieces together. And I thank you again for that, and it's been really brilliant to talk to you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Thomas. Brig, you've been patient as ever. Lovely to see you, Brig. Over to you.
Thank you, Chief Mario. A fascinating presentation, and thank you for that. The first thing I have to say is, please forgive my total ignorance that I have never heard of Geminiani. What I will say is, I feel and perhaps this is a personal view, I find it very, very difficult to relate to the 1700s. And because of my theosophical background, I perhaps feel, and I have no knowledge of this, that H.P. Blavatsky, who fought on the side of Garibaldi, may well have had knowledge of Geminiani. But this secret history is of so much import because it influenced the Renaissance. These unsung heroes, if you will, they were the very ones that actually carried this wave of movement. And I'll refer to the last speaker. I still think, rightly or wrongly, that there is a move to still and exterminate any spiritual perception still of the Renaissance. But my question is this about the character which you have enlightened us on. Do you think that he could have been influenced by Pythagoras' perception of the music of the spheres?
Okay, it's very interesting, and I have to thank you for your question, because you said I never heard of him. Since this is an international study group, but this is also an esoteric society, our energies are connecting. Our energies are connecting. Okay, like in the Mr. Circle. This is very important. So, your question is the music of the spheres. Yes, this is precisely what I was mentioning. What we call it Pythagorean is also related to the fact that all source of energies can be translated into music. I give you an example. I am fond of one again. I can tell the ear. Shane, I can speak about this here, not elsewhere. I speak to my plants, and they reply.
Yeah, good for you.
If I say the same to other people, they say this man is insane. But it's a fact. You understand me? And again, everything is music, can be turned music. Then you have bad music, good music. It depends from whence it comes, that's the point. So again, yes, I mentioned the Pythagorean tradition, so it makes sense, your question. Yes, the answer it is precisely that. This is the tradition they had, and related to the fact that especially certain areas of Italy, which were settled by the Greek. This is something they maintain. I still don't know, but they maintain the link and the traditions. And then you have this kind of people that they had this incredible life. There is another man very important you don't know, but is a great Neapolitan philosopher. And this man again is part of that. He was saying something very close to what you said. He said precisely something related to Pythagoras, to the doctrine of the spheres, the Greek heritage, etc., etc., etc. Brig. Correct. Thank you. Thank you for your question.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Brig.
Thank you so much, Mario, for your comments. Most valued, dear brother.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brig. I'd like to add something, please, based on how you raised the point earlier about the Geminiani's statement about being involved with music at that particular time in history. Renaissance music there was a big shift in the form and structure of music back then. And being a musician at that time, I dare say that he would have been very fascinated by the shifts and changes in musical form and structure that was taking place at that time. And it reminds me, there's a wonderful book I'd recommend called, it's by an author called Jacques Attali. And the title of the book is Noise, the Political Economy of Music. And this puts forward the opinion that throughout all human history, when we think about musical form and structure, at certain points in time, the whole framework of music shifted and transformed. And at every point in time where there was a transformation, yes, Thomas, I'll put that title of the book in the chat for anyone who's interested, that at each point in human history, when there's been a shift and a change in the form of music, that has ushered in, it's been like a precursor for shifts and transformations that then later begin to take place in society. And of course, around that same time in the 1800s, you had later on, you had Pluto entering Aquarius for a 20-odd year period, and that saw in massive change and transformation that would have happened around the time leading up to Geminiani's passing. But his lifetime would have been spent during that transitional period. And in relation to architecture, so it made me think, I've seen, maybe you've seen some of these experiments where certain sound frequencies cause levitation in objects. And it made me wonder, it's all speculation, but you know, in terms of architecture and music or sonics and the use of sound in architecture, it does make me speculate with a great sense of awe and wonder that some of the ways that sound has been utilized maybe a long time ago, very, very effectively in architecture as a skill which we have lost over a long period of time.
Yes, definitely yes. By the way, the criticism on architecture, one of the most important critics of modern architecture is the King of England. It's the King of England.
Yeah.
He criticized, I mean, I'm speaking about it back in the 80s, he started criticizing bad architecture. This is very well known, King Charles, you know. So, and it is another example. And the king himself is very fond of music, by the way.
Who?
The king, King Charles, is very fond of music. He's going to come to visit Italy in April.
Okay.
Very important thing happening. And I think, anyway.
So, Hasu, you have had your hand up for some time. Over to you, please.
Thank you. Now the hand up and stay as long, because it's such a wonderful conversation. All the others making their observations is the learning curve for all of us. But Mike, I come from a different thought process as well. Is that this was, as I said earlier on, this was a period of turmoil in Europe, politically, socially, economically, religiously, you know, in terms of religions. I've always wondered that those who are the upper echelons of arts were also, and who traveled, were also involved in a bit of what we call spying, basically. Yeah, because remember that you can hide a lot of information in music notes. No one will ever know what you're, and you can bring those notes back. No one will understand what you've written until someone who knows the decoder can decode what you've written. by playing the same notes. I mean, this has been, even in the Second World War, there's the case of Josephine Baker, who used to do that, hide messages in her music. So do you think, because, when you mentioned his travels to Ireland, to France, Netherlands, Italy, now these are all the sort of key points of conflicts as such, and also information, what's happening in Europe, what's happening in England, what's happening in Ireland. Do you think he was also sort of combining the two together to sort of, because he was pretty much allowed to travel everywhere, so he would have made the perfect person to carry messages on behalf of anyone, really. I'm not saying that he was spying from one side, or he may have been a mediator amongst all these different parts, taking messages, trying to find solutions.
Okay, thanks for the question, because again, like the other one, make me, in that sense, you make me free to say whatever I want. Okay, it's because I'm replying, I'm not stating. I'm replying. So the answer is split in two. First, Azu, don't forget that he came all of a sudden in 17. I put here in the slides in 1714. The date is very important for England. Keep this in mind. The date is 1714. I dedicated an entire slide to that. So why he came? And the answer could be that yours. Second thing, he traveled around. Apart from Ireland, the fact he came and go from Paris and the Netherlands, and he could speak perfect Italian, English, French, etc., etc. So the man was capable to have a certain capacity of intelligence, between brackets. So I'm not surprised. The other thing I have to say, Azu, yesterday I was speaking to a brother who is another specialist on Geminiani life and wrote books, and he said precisely the same thing you've just said. He said, I think he was related to what we call in modern times intelligence, or work of intelligence, or collecting piece of intelligence, even news, even whatever, a gossip, even a gossip, It's sometimes knowing something that could be meaningless, or may sound meaningless, then could be very important. So again, yes, I agree with you, but thank to your question, I can say yes, he was doing this, because there are certain spots. I repeat, reading different reconstruction of Geminiani's biography, you see a main history of his life, certain period of time, but you don't know precisely what he did and where he was and how and why. The letter he wrote from the Hague in 46, 47 at the British Library were written, very interesting thing, were written to an Englishman, to an English address in London, but the letter was written in Italian. That's very interesting. I read the letter because I have the pic. I read the letter, said, why is this? And the letter itself was meaningless. He was speaking about minor things in organizing monies, or pay this, do that. But again, of course, a piece of letter like that could be an information regarding his biography. But he didn't say, I'm here in the Hague, who's paying for my stay there, for instance. We say follow the money. Again, you can apply this also to the life of Geminiani. Who paid for his travel? Who paid when he arrived in London? Where did he live? Where did he stay? Again, in Paris. Again, you say, okay, he sustained himself because he was a professional musician. Good. But you don't live at such a highest level if you are not connected, as this is something that we know for sure, certain, to an elite, and that you are supporting or working for. Again, also working for. Thank you.
Thank you. And just one more thing. You know the image you showed earlier on with the shields. How many shields were on there? I forgot. I'm sorry, I was looking at it and then I forgot to count them.
I have to check. Geminiani is registered as number 10, and he has a blank shield. I'm going to send you the pic. You took the
Fantastic.
pic. Asu, you
I
were the
I
one who
lost it
clicked.
probably.
Yeah, you shot, so you know this, by the way.
Bless
That's
you.
it. Thanks, Asu.
I can blame it on age and
Well, I'm
forgetfulness.
gonna send you the entire story. Okay, not
Bless you.
everything. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sue. Thanks once again. I have a very good couple of questions in the chat here. One of them is, what is the influence of Geminiani's music in Freemasonry?
Mhm.
And I think that's a very, very useful, very interesting question.
Right. I have to say, I don't know, to the brother who put this question, I have to say that there is a chapter in my work I prepared, and presented in Lodge in Lucca, which was clearly related to Geminiani and music theory and Freemasonry. So there are specific parts on that. I can, if you want, I can send just few notes regarding this. But of course, as I mentioned during my presentation, when you see in guida armonica fine senza fine, Shane, it means in English makes sense of endlessness, something that never ends, never ending.
Yeah.
Endlessness. So fine senza fine means this. And the idea I received as a Freemason in Italian is the Ouroboros.
Yes.
Again, the same. You write in Italian, in English, in whatever you want. But if I show you Ouroboros, you understand me, Shane. So think about it, put at the end, at the bottom, fine senza fine. And then as if you see an Ouroboros, but this is the idea. The concept is that you speak to the profane, because it's a book for still today is published, this music theory, there are exercise music and for students, and then you have the idea that's fine senza fine. It means that music is precise, the theory of music. Now, this is something that is coming to my mind, I could reply to the brother. Music can be played forever. I can take certain, music or even a riddle, or any kind of music, a kind of a tune, and I can play it forever, senza fine, endless. So again, this idea was clearly represented by James Joyce. Finnegan's Wake is fine senza fine, is endless. The concept of endlessness, because it starts over when it finished. When you think it starts, you're reading the end. By the way, when you start reading, you're reading the end. You are reading the end, and vice versa. When you think I finished the book, if you can, of course, succeed to read it, everything, then you start again, because it's fin again. You know what I mean? Over and over again. This is precisely the music tune in Finnegan's Wake that it turned into a novel. But the idea is the same. Music is strictly related, it could be infinite, and structured also to the doctrine of the spheres, blah, blah, blah. That's a fact.
Somebody else, Thomas, in the chat here has put a question. Has anybody put these seemingly random letters to a cipher?
No, I don't know. The answer, I don't know. We have these letters.
Maybe not yet. Maybe not yet.
Yeah, I think so. We can use also the support intelligence AI. There are archived at British Library, State Archive there. So you read that. I spotted someone asking relation to Mozart. The answer to Mozart is that the art of playing violin was written and published many years before Mozart theories. This is to make you understand. By the way, the art of playing violin is not a translation, was written directly in English, not in Italian, because he wrote both. It was sometimes when you read certain things, all mix it up, typical of Italians living in England.
I also
I'm an
another thing I found really curious is that apparently the piano wasn't invented until the 18th century. So the piano's influence upon music from that point onward was huge.
Oh, definitely yes, because it was a new thing. In those days, there was the harpsichord. You say this in English, harpsichord. By the way, something that you made me say, there was a duo, Geminiani and Handel, playing together. Keep this in mind. There is no record for that, lost forever. Consider this. Asu is in the Akashic memory, but Handel played harpsichord while Geminiani played the violin. Think about the duo, how much you would pay. Another important thing I'm keeping in my mind is very interesting. Francesco Saverio Geminiani is the man who invented modern concert. For you, going to a concert, you go online on the app and you buy the ticket online, okay? The guy who invented this was Francesco Saverio Geminiani. He created a place, a private place, where he say, if you want to listen to me, you pay the ticket. He's the man who invented this. And he made this at Haymarket Square. This is when he started. This is absolutely unbelievable because the concept of playing music in public was unusual. So if you wanted to listen to my works or my music, there was no copyright yet. You pay.
I find it personally fascinating. If I understood you correctly, Mario, that the lodge meetings that Geminiani was involved with emphasized music. Was that correct?
They perform.
I'm fascinated by that, and I would really love to find a way for meetings of the Metropolitan Study Group at some point in the future to include music, because there are a number of us who are musicians, and I'm a great believer.
Kevin, I can speak to Kevin if you want. I can speak to Kevin.
Kevin, yes, absolutely.
He lives in Lausanne.
Yes.
He said many times, come over. It's 3 hours by train from Milan. So I'm going to visit and speak about this, not only about, but this is something he may do for us. He's also a composer.
Yes, I'm aware of this. And I would love to find a way to do some kind of musical sound experiment. If you could look at it in that way at a future meeting. Obviously, an in-person meeting. Yes. I'm a great
do with the vegetables.
I'm a great believer in spontaneous improvisation and what can come through the musicians involved in such an improvisation, particularly if it's done in a meditative setting.
Or also just for instance, I'm fond of jazz music. I think you are. Because you like fusion. Is a generational, I think. Fusion music, yes. Me too. I'm fond of that. Weather report, steps ahead, etc. But improvisation is everything. But to improvise, you must be really a great master. You can master music. And again, nothing happens by chance. Improvisation is everything. So think about live recording, Handel, Geminiani playing, and we lost this.
Mm.
And another important thing, as you said, is the music of the plants. You can connect them and then turn into what we can hear, because of course there are certain frequencies that, for instance, dogs can hear. We can't, for instance, and our ears are very limited. So again, you can get music from my rosemary plants, for instance. I can say this here because otherwise you say I'm crazy,
No, but everything that lives or exists has a vibration. Whether we can feel it is a different thing. We also produce vibrations.
Yes.
The receptors are the key. Who receives them? And you have to be of a very sensitive nature to receive those fine vibrations that you're talking about, Mario, about plants and the energies around you. I think all of us have that within us. We just got to press the activate switch. I mean, Shane, you're a master of the, sort of the trained mind into hearing the unaudible as such. I mean, in your practices, you do that. And I think that is the key to that art of trying to understand the universe and your environment.
I think we all feel that on a subconscious level. That you were saying that it's the key to activating it, but there's such an amazing amount of modern research, and a lot of it isn't very beneficial because it's since World War II the kind of theory of music has been spun on its head and used as weaponry or as a psychological base. But because of that, there is so much information and research now about for hemisync, for example, where they have mapped with fMRI's human brainwave and the interference of brainwaves via sound and how to activate certain frequencies with sound in the human mind. And all that research is out there. And I think it just takes it needs an opposition, a group that is using that research for other things, for this type of thing, to be able to help the world rather than using them as weapons. Using them as crowd control and certain frequencies for that. I absolutely love isotronic tones, some binaural beats, but I know that my headphones aren't powerful enough to utilize them to what it needs to be. But I'm a firm believer in hemisync, and it does work. I've watched my brainwaves, via Muse headband. So I can literally track what my brain is doing as I'm listening to certain frequencies. And definitely hemisync works, but the conversation is fascinating. We do need almost like an opposition needs to be set up so that we can use this technology and bring it into the future, because it's been there for thousands of years.
I mean, so coming from a background from the East, India, music is improvised, never sort of written down, so it doesn't have the strict barriers of notes as such. And the musicians improvise on the mood of the audience, those who are sort of playing the instruments, how they're interacting with each other. The notes would vary, the rhythm would vary, the frequency, they would change that. I mean, there have been instances of heard stories of where they've been playing, these musicians have been playing in a room or a hall or whatever, and they've been playing certain ragas. And one was to do with the rain, and everyone thought after this whole thing had finished that it was actually raining outside, because they had created that sound. They created the mind to think, it's raining outside, because the mind was thinking of rain, and the vibrations and the echoes of was of rain falling on the roof or on other objects. So I think there's a lot of manipulation that music can do, and as you said, Mario, musicians adapt at changing notes. I mean, you only have a limited number of notes, but it's how you bend, stretch, manipulate those notes that creates the atmosphere.
Oh yes, that definitely yes. Is that as you the answer is that it's vibrations. Of course, it's vibration. Everything is vibration. I mean, I'm reading your book, Glimpse on Vedic Metaphysics. That you gave me, and this is precisely, if you say what is talking about this, that we are all vibrations. So this is, in few words, absolutely, it's a fact. And so for the Vedic tradition, is very clear. At least in your tradition, it is very clear. That's a fact, because it is strictly related to nature, and to nature not only as an object, but as a subject. There is a huge difference in that. That's a fact.
I think the whole I like what you said about music being part of our some group activities, because they actually, in a way, create the same vibration. You're listening to, everyone, even if you come in with a different vibration within yourself, once you start introducing music, we all start vibrating on the same frequency, which means that our thoughts and our energies are focused in one direction.
Oh, yes.
Somebody in the chat, Robert, has put a really interesting question. 432 Hertz question mark. Where can we listen to some of Geminiani's music on the internet? Is there a music library of him?
So if you want immediately to start, you may digit, his name, and then you get, for instance, on YouTube, or I think it's also Spotify. You can also listen to certain part of that for free, and there are plenty of these, yes, of his works. Also a good, very good level, and then you started to understand what was the Baroque music. What was the entire tradition of what we call the Baroque music, of the late Baroque music, that is also a period of time expressing, as you both said, a vibration of a time, of a certain moment. And for instance, I set my work on Geminiani, the part with Freemasonry, because this man is not a Freemason, but he is very fond of Baroque music, and is part also certain organization regarding the study of Baroque music in Israel, and is reading the part related to music and Freemasonry because, of course, he does not know the Masonic side, music. That's something that, again, we can speak, calling a spade here, not only because we are among a circle, an international study group, but it is also that more or less we may meet people who are closer. And if you made certain, certain statement, you are not considered crazy. That's a fact. But anyway, if you digit Robert, if you digit Francesco Saverio Geminiani, you can get a certain, performance regarding it.
Well, sorry, I think I forwarded you this link as well. And last Friday at Milton Court Concert Hall, they had a concert, Italian Legacies, Geminiani and his English contemporaries, the music. So, now the name has come in, you can start looking, because I think there's a lot of, these are sort of niche areas, but they are covered by concerts and musical presentations. So maybe keep an eye out for the next one they're going to do somewhere.
Oh yes, I didn't want to stress many other views regarding Geminiani. He wrote also a work which was not a success. It was first it was firstly performed in Paris, and is called the Enchanted Forest. The Enchanted Forest is related to, as you say, enchanted magic moment, and is related to a special chapter of a huge piece of poetry, Italian poetry, and then there's description, and then you start to understand what is a musical poem. Is the beginning of that is going to be very famous in 18th century. That is to say, at least more than 1 century after Geminiani, and in which he put in music an episode of this, call it poem novel, which is called La Gerusalemme Liberata by Torquato Tasso. And then it's going to be another story that is related to, and it's related to another environment. So it's quite complex to be introduced here, because then you have to know so many other parts of the Italian culture that, by the way, 99% of Italians don't know, but basically I speak to 2 or 3%, not more. Nothing else. This is the situation. So you have also this magic side, and then if you go, for instance, chain, very interesting. If you go and look for the Enchanted Forest, Geminiani Enchanted Forest, then you listen to these pieces, going to be 35 minutes long. And then you understand, you listen to his music, the music of that time, and the subject is related to a certain environment, which was deeply involved, chain, and to the other fratres, to the magical thoughts in those days. and then he opens up many other things. One day I would say to you, because it's going to be very, very fantastic for those who are not involved in certain environments.
Mario, did you say the Enchanted Forest?
Yes, the Enchanted Forest.
Thank
La
you.
Forêt Enchantée. La Forêt Enchantée. This is the original title in French, and but there is also translation. I think Haymarket was Haymarket Square, 1756 in London, something like that. Again, we don't know because we have no real records of what he performed. You know, there was no internet in those days. The Enchanted Forest. Let me try something.
I've found it on Spotify. Thank you.
Ah, okay.
Yes, I found
Perfect.
there's a whole album. The Enchanted, and Enchanted is spelt with an I, not an E.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've got it, and I'll have a real good listen to that. I'm looking forward to listening.
Yeah.
Thank you very
And
much.
then you understand also the
You can share
story.
the link in Spotify.
Yes.
Yeah, 1 second. Let me see if I can do that. 1 sec. Oh, please go ahead while I.
So, Mario, do you know anyone who may be thinking of maybe writing something in terms of musical portion about the book you're writing? So, based on stuff, your paper, to make it something into a sort of musical way of reading the book.
Regarding what, Asu? Sorry.
So the book you're writing about this person, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could convert some of that
Yeah.
into a
I just
musical
put
interlude?
in the here, as you can see in the chat, is written precisely the title of the poem, the author, and the chapter. The chapter 13th is La Foresta Incantata, the Enchanted Forest. And this is you may find absolutely the plot in English, Shane Azu, and then you understand where it is. It's a very interesting subject that is of a strong Neoplatonic background. This is very interesting. And then you understand that there is a sort of tradition because it was written soon after that group of people living in the first half of the 15th century in Italy, related to Neoplatonism. This is it. So again, you understand many things. I told you that I was to visit Rimini Cathedral, which is a temple. It's called temple because when you get in Shane, you say this is not a church. It's unbelievable. You see, there are all the constellations. It is unbelievable. It is unbelievable.
The reason
really.
I asked about that number of shields, Geminiani, one of the Gemini, one of the.
Yeah.
So, I was wondering if this 12 shields, which represent.
I write you something.
Because I was thinking of the architecture plus his name plus would it represent some sort of also astronomical and astrological?
Read what I sent you. Read it in Sanskrit. What I sent you. This is the idea. J, Ni. You say Ni, it's like the Spanish character, Ni, I. J, in Sanskrit.
Yeah.
It's Dharma. Okay? It means the capacity of generation. Low, etc., etc. It's precisely that.
It reminds me of the empty vessel in alchemy.
Yes.
The blank shield, the empty vessel. I wonder. I don't have a picture of the shields to hand, but did you say that the one of the shields at the top had a border, but it was blank?
Oh yes, it was completely blank because this is the shield of Geminiani. He hadn't.
Okay, so because I was just wondering about sort of music theory and about the each note transcends from the first, but there
No,
is no.
Thomas. Thomas, the fact is simple for coat of arms. In England, also those who were not members of the nobility could have a coat of arms. Okay, like esquires, etc., etc. In Italy, it was not.
Oh,
The
okay.
division was extremely strict. Geminiani was a bourgeois, a commoner, as you say in English, and so he had no coat of arms at all. This was very strict in Italy,
I see.
especially
I
in those
didn't know
days.
whether it was left intentionally blank to note the divine, almost like the Kabbalah. You can
No,
get
no,
to
no,
the
no,
eighth,
no,
but not the ninth.
absolutely. He had no coat of arms. If he would have had, they would have published. It's not a problem. The fact is that he was a commoner and he had no shields, no coat of arms. Like, I mean, in England, for instance, where even between brackets, ordinary people, not members of the nobility, could have had their own coat of arms. I mean,
Yeah,
this was very tight. In those
yeah.
days, it was absolutely tight.
It's a shame that he didn't live a bit longer and reach the medieval revival where everyone was popping out their coats of arms.
We needed Thomas to have a medieval revival.
Yeah,
Keep this
yeah,
in
that's it.
mind. The great
But
difference, the great gap that sometimes, especially after decades of studying English culture, and the great gap and the great difference between Italy and England is that those who think of being traditionalists or to preserve and keep traditions are the ones who throw away. The other ones who are considered to be throwing away the tradition are the traditionalists. It's a fact.
But they had such
That's just
they had a chunk of information to go off, but almost not enough. So I'm a builder myself. I work, well, not anymore, but I've worked in traditional and ecclesiastical buildings for 18 years. And
yes.
so the medieval revival for me is a big period. So I love William Morris, I love Pugin, and they were trying to almost translate texts that they had. And for example, there's a stone carving. And it's the chimerecta, a convex and a concave style of carving, or the
Yes. Yes.
OG curve. And they didn't know what that stood for. They didn't know the symbology behind it. So they just attached a crude word to that. But it was thrown up everywhere in people's buildings because they knew that it had some sort of significance to it. And it wasn't until the last 100 years where I think they surfaced a pre-Vedic temple where they had the stone carving there in Sri Lanka, and they were able to almost read. It had the symbology behind it, and it's completely
Yes.
different to what these medieval revivalists thought it was. So it's almost like they had the information, but just not the keys to that information.
Yes, and the point is that precisely that. If you read, for instance, regarding Lucca, regarding Geminiani again, there is this brother who made a very interesting book on certain cathedrals and many other important sites in Lucca and surroundings, at high level of esotericism. That can be written because there was the capacity to have all the notes, books, records that date back since the foundation. For instance, the San Martin Cathedral in Lucca was starting building in 1112, but we have everything because everything was preserved. That's a fact that you have to keep in mind. That's a
Yeah,
problem.
definitely. Yeah. And now
Keep
with
this in
the
mind.
advantages in technology, we've got that
No,
ability.
no, Thomas, no. It was that, physically speaking, plenty of records, plenty of abbeys, because everything, especially England, being a Norman, on the Norman feudal system, there were the division between the abbeys, that is to say, the abbots, and the barons. This was
Yeah.
England. It was like, agreed, okay? Apart from you, lay clergy. When you destroyed half, more than half, of the greed, then it remains to you the ashes. Okay, this is what happened. This must be faced once and forever. Revivalism is the unconscious and subconscious side of a people that decide to say, okay, well, we lost this, and what about this? And this is precisely, it's perfect. What you have said to me is great, because you simply say to me that this is precisely the mood you have.
Yeah,
And also, SRIA start in the same way. It is absolutely the same.
Yeah, because
The
it
ritual.
exists on a spiritual level and the physical
No,
manifestations of that.
you need a right. You need to a sort of right. That's a fact, which was completely cancelled at certain level. This is the point. It's very interesting from my view, you know. And
Do you
this
mean
is something I've been
like
studying for ages.
ceremonial
Oh yes,
ritual?
oh yes,
Yeah,
definitely
100%.
yes.
Yeah, and that's why
Well, this is
society is
precise.
how it is. Yeah,
Well,
we don't have
I
Can
that.
mean,
I ask
Thomas.
you, you use the word
Yeah.
ceremonial ritual. Is it ceremonial journey rather than ritual? Because ritual is just a stepping stone to a journey. Because you need many rituals to reach a goal.
No, the Thomas was speaking about a special cultural feature of England.
Yes. No, but what I'm talking about is
Correct me if I'm wrong. And
No, that's right.
there's a sort of, it's nostalgic, which is something that I always, I mean, since I arrived there, I lived also in Ireland, I say, what is the matter of those people regarding this? But I couldn't understand you at all. Now I started to understand.
Yeah,
Again,
it's almost like
those
the
who,
rites of passage that's missing.
yes, it's something that you were misplaced, you know, and something you're missing, something that you lost, you know. And
Yeah,
this is something that is very clear in psychology, in your psychology. That's a fact.
100%. Yeah, we're so far behind, you know, and even now, the modern medicine still limits the capacity to
Yes.
allow for that. So if someone goes to the doctors, like you said, here we can speak of things without being looked at like we're crazy, but for young individuals experiencing the spiritual and the divine, and they don't know what's going on, they don't have access to, you know, even craft masonry has lost its ability to be able to assist these individuals because they just don't
God
know, you
bless
know.
you. God
And
bless you. God
they
bless
go
you.
to the doctors and they get antipsychotics and antidepressants, and you know they're
Yes,
diagnosed with
because
tinnitus and all this. You know,
you're like
Yeah,
your
remember,
doctor is a
Thomas,
vet.
that the medical profession has one mantra, which is that you find as the patients that will manufacture the drugs.
yeah, that's it. Yeah, and you know, and so for example, you know, I tried. I meditate, but I built a wall because it was too much. So I had to, you know, I think there's the Sufi tradition of building a hut by the Palace of Wisdom. So I used that technique to essentially establish a room in my own head where I can safely work from. And I did this before I joined the Rosicrucians because I was looking, you know, I'm a new member of Elias Ashmole College. And it wasn't until I found them that I could actually start speaking about this kind of stuff, because I'd go to my doctors and I'd tell them, look, I can hear the buzz of the world and I can hear the pain. And they
Yeah.
said, oh, you've got tinnitus and take
Yes,
this, or,
because
you know, go away.
you're a psychotic, you know.
Yeah,
It's very
yeah,
dangerous. Remember, keep this in mind. It is very dangerous because doctors they say, okay, take this pill, etc., etc. Then they can inform NHS. You know what I
yeah.
mean? They
Hmm.
they can do this. Even in Italy, they can do the same thing. You know, and especially young people like you, doctors. You know, they are terrible because they treat you like a dog. You know, they go to the vet, they say, do this, do that, take the vaccine, blah, 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 blah. But my doctor, I was to the doctors yesterday, okay? That my doctor is retiring by the end of the year. He's 70 years old, 70 years old. He's retiring, but it's a dialogue we do start speaking to understand what I have.
Hmm.
Okay, this is called anamnesis in Greek. But nowadays they see, well, I listen certain things, I speak to plants, pills. I can say I can listen to the music of plants to you, but I can't say this to especially a young doctor today. They think
Yeah.
I'm psychotic.
But do you think, I mean, in the past, medicine was practiced by those who understood nature, by the plant world, the tree world, the atmosphere, everything that was nature. They were condemned as witches or, practitioners of the evil arts.
Yeah.
Today, that medicine is now reviving again because we are returning back to that traditional form of medication, not to just stuff you with pills, but to first find an underlying cause and then give you natural, naturally produced medications, which plants produce to protect themselves. Basically, it's nothing, nothing magic. It's
It
about
was demonized, wasn't it? Yeah, completely demonized.
So we're moving away from that. I think now the generations coming through are sort of quite open to listening to those ideas, to move towards that thinking rather than saying, okay, pop a pill 3 times a day, unless you're a sort of fanatic gym person. But many are now sort of turning to sort of looking at traditional things, food, all sorts of allergies. I think in a way, maybe a small movement, but it is growing. I mean, I've noticed it.
Yeah, definitely. There was, a big pivotal moment in that was the shift from the church to almost deny the soul, and so and the spirit. They said that the soul and the spirit was the same thing, and so we lost the understanding here. I don't know about other countries. We were almost forced. It was force fed down our throats from school, from our environment that. There was no attachment to the vegetative world, the vegetative side of humans, and it's a bit more of understanding now that we're not singular. And I said it earlier that we're part of the ocean. We're not the wave, and there is a big movement of individuals who are looking for the right answers and not getting them. And unfortunately, it just seems like they're being stopped. Stopped from that. And even in the Rosicrucians, I joined Masons because I was looking for the Rosicrucians, and for me, I joined the Masons and I was asking people questions and I was understanding things that I was going through. The first, second, and third degrees, and I was talking to people, and they're like, "Oh no, we do that just because that's what we've always done." But don't you understand the significance there? Don't you understand the connections?
Because everything has been standardized, cut down to fit in an hour and a half.
Yeah.
There's nothing
Thomas.
like this discussion that we can have open. You feel great. I can talk about what I think, and I can listen to someone else's thoughts. But I was telling someone the other day, New Mason, I said, do you know that when the original cathedrals and churches were built, stonemasons actually had 7 degrees that you had to pass through, not like more than 3 degrees. And they said, oh, 7 degrees. Is that how did they? I said, well, there was a traditional way of the 7 steps. The 7 being a very significant spiritual number as well.
Yeah, and that was the same going back into before the Normans. So even the Anglo-Saxons and the Bretons, when we had the Druids in England, they had these. You had a Bryant, a Bard Bryant, and moving up towards the Druid and or the Air Druids, and it was a case of that was squashed by military means. And then opened up in secretive ways, so that the Gentiles were allowed to call themselves Masons or Freemasons, so that they were allowed to travel. And then with that travel and movement, they were allowed to go to other individuals who could teach them the knowledge, and they could bring that back. And again, I think it's just a case of that everything here has been squashed through years of revolutions. And different eras have always squashed what happened before them. And even today, we're still living in this, sort of industrial, pre-Victorian England that, our kids are literally told to conform and force-fed information that is not relevant to them.
I think you mentioned Freemason and craft mason, but I think, it's path of an individual what they wish to follow. There should be, if you're being spiritual and being subjective about it, then each journey is as useful for an individual if they understand their journey. If
Yeah.
they don't understand their journey, then it's futile whether you do 3 steps, 10 steps, or, three, or that you join 5 orders. It has no value. It has
But do you
to
think
be,
they could get lost in it?
yes,
So
exactly,
because if they think that's where they're going to get the answers, and there's no almost like a body of individuals going in there to look for these type of people to pick them out. It's really reliant on the own individual themselves, and there's a lot of first degree Masons who go through their initiation and don't come back, and these are the younger population.
Yeah, but the seeker will always find the seer if he looks
Yes.
hard enough.
Yeah.
I would say I think it's a really fascinating subject that you're touching upon there, Thomas, and I agree with you completely that there's it always has been this way, that there's been the kind of more mainstream Freemasonry, and then there are those who have a disposition, a propensity to look more deeply, and what often they've found is that the people in their mother lodge aren't the right people to ask.
Yeah.
And so that sends us on a quest.
Yeah.
Really. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
well, if the people around me in this lodge are not able or willing to address the questions I might have, then how can I seek them out? And exactly what you've outlined that you've done already is to seek out the SRIA, for instance, and then joining the SRIA, having access to these kind of conversations with people of like mind and heart. The necessity to search for the company of the right kind of people is a really valuable part of the process. And it requires that we're determined and diligent and persistent and consistent.
But there is that aspect, so it's very similar to what you said, but it was a case of I was looking for the Rosicrucians, and I didn't know where to look for them. And there was a lot of things that I was reading and listening to that almost the doors of Freemasonry was closed, but it said that something like this happens in Masonry or in this part of Masonry, or this is derived from that. And so because I just couldn't, I didn't know where to go. I didn't know where to look. So I joined the Masons.
Yeah.
And it's a case of that I almost felt trapped. And I'm obliged now out of my own sense of authenticity to carry on with my mother lodge and to keep going to craft. But the more I expand and grow as an individual, the more craft doesn't appeal to me.
I think that's a common experience. That's a very common experience, yes, in my opinion.
But then it's a case of what can I what can I do for that, because I'm obliged to carry on and stay with them.
Well, here's a suggestion. I think that people join groups of any kind often because they're looking for something. It's like, what if I join this, what will it give me? And I think that what's more important sometimes is to approach things not because of what we feel we can get from it, but by what we are able to contribute to it. So maybe the very fact that you have the interests you have, which are maybe a little more esoterically minded than the majority of people in your mother lodge, that by choosing, if you choose to do so, to continually contribute to the work of that mother lodge, that you in time will be that person in that lodge who other newer members can turn to and ask questions and engage in conversations with, where previously, maybe before you, there weren't any.
But isn't sorry, I was going to say, isn't it ironic that the SRIA full library is now at the Library Museum
at
UGL?
I agree.
Isn't it a wonderful, ironic situation?
Yeah, I think so, Hassan.
But I was just thinking, but what if because we've seen, I've seen, and I don't know whether it's the common thought of other individuals, but there's a bit of a push by Grand Lodge to remove themselves from the spiritual or esoteric aspect. With, for example, separating the square and compass on the logo.
Yeah, exactly.
Removing the G from the logo and replacing it with a Grand Lodge symbol.
Yeah, I completely agree with you.
And so, what happens if we put our faith into craft masonry, and craft masonry suppresses us because of that? Like Dormer Masonic studies, they are banned from performing any esoteric symbolism in lodge.
Well,
I'm very well aware of that situation, having been a member of the Dormer for a long time, and also my mother lodge is the Lodge of the Double Horizon that was born out of
fantastic.
I'm very aware of that situation, and yet that lodge has found ways around the pushback that's been experienced from United Grand Lodge of England, and there are ways of continuing to work in a more mystical way, or a more deeper spiritual way in those lodge meetings, but it all depends on the understanding of the participants.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And if you get a group of people who do understand those dynamics, and the relevance of the symbolism and the allegory while they're going through those ceremonies, then they can be very esoterically nourishing.
Yes, yeah. A good friend of mine is in the Dormer. Well, I'm a member of Dormer Masonic Studies, yes. And a good friend of mine is my spiritual mentor. Sort of divinely found him randomly out of the blue. And he's very good, very helpful with me for this sort of thing, because it's a case of that, I go to lodge and I see lots of people there, and it's almost like you lose a bit of hope, because it's there's so much that we could do and can do, and we're limited by like the chap said before, that by an hour of ceremony, it's all got to be rushed through. Oh, you're not allowed to read the extended version of the second tools. It's got to be this version, and it's a nightmare. And so I go.
For what it's worth, I think also for what it's worth, Thomas. Sorry, 1 second. I'll finish with this. One of the most deeply mystical, spiritual, and esoterically minded people that I have had the pleasure to know, who's passed on now, who was very senior in the SRIA, had exactly the same experience when he joined craft Freemasonry a very long time ago, of asking people in his mother lodge certain questions, and nobody could give the answers. But like I say, that sent him on a particular quest to find suitable people who could answer those questions. So yeah, I think it's very comforting to be persistent in those things, and to seek out the company of people of like mind and heart.
But doesn't it whole thing starts from before you become a member of craft masonry, that whoever is proposing you or whoever is inviting you should make you fully aware that it doesn't have an esoteric side. It's just purely a ritualistic element, and it has got a certain number of degrees, and you do a certain few things, and it's that is, and if you want to think beyond that, then there are other things that you can become a member of, start or participate in once you join craft masonry. I think in a way, UGLE has not told you can't join anything else. What he's saying is we're not interested in the esoteric side. Yeah, that's why we took religion and politics out of the whole concept of craft masonry, because it would then create a lot of ideas, not necessary. So keep it to the basics initially, and then your journey and your paths are open afterwards. But the most important thing, Thomas, that you said was that there should be a lead to find those who can lead you into those paths, which do not exist within many of the lodges. I think that is that's the element that is missing. It's not that you saying don't join anything. You know, this is wrong.
But this is the shop front, you know. This is I've made
exactly,
that
you know,
argument and made that point several times, and you know, I stood up in front of the PGM and 100+ Freemasons when, you know, this was the first time I ever stood up in public and spoke and said to them, you know, because so I wasn't recommended to Freemasonry by anyone. I applied to Grand Lodge myself, and then I was vetted and deemed fit to be admitted. Now, I've stood in front of the PGM and said that the process of that was very difficult. And I wonder how many people actually get through that process of applying to Grand Lodge and being eligible for an interview. And his reply wasn't very supportive of a specific group of people. And I don't think that I would have got in because of my way of thinking. I'm a neurodivergent as well, so I would message, you know, think of something at 3 o'clock in the morning, and you know, I immediately need to act on that, or it's gone for the next day. And you know, they screen the emails, they screen the contact, and it's a very specific type of individual that is, you know, gets through.
Thomas,
I think
sorry, Hasu and Thomas, could I just interject, please? Because I would like to steer the course of our dialogue back to Mario and the subject of his presentation today.
Yeah.
Kind of got off on a tangent here. Very interesting and relevant, but really today's presentation is for Mario. And
that was sorry,
Mario, to direct our thoughts
No,
back to
I mean, nothing happens by chance. I was listening to your experiences because it's happening in Freemasonry in Italy. It's happening the same thing, especially as Thomas said regarding young people. They get initiated and after a while they drop and they stop, blah, blah, blah. Why? Because they do not find the right answers. The questions you put, and precisely what you said, I repeat, they ask for questions, and those inside the lodge, I mean, the masters, past masters, etc., are incapable to deliver proper and rightful answers to that questions. This is precisely the same. The same. It means that there is a general crisis. So we can again reattach to what happened 3 centuries ago. While 3 centuries ago there was an enthusiasm that made explode literally from 1717 4 lodges to nearly 60 lodges in 1727, when the Philo Musicae Lodge ceased to exist, considered 10 years after that. And because there were such a different environment as society, and stop giving or blaming social networks, mobile phones, blah, the other stuff that they killed certain kind of being of relationship between people. No, in my opinion, is that the society has changed a lot. Individualism is everything, and people do not feel like to gather together in order to talk about butterflies, I suppose, something like that, something that happened in many years ago. We have, for instance, an Italian expression related to the coffee shop when you had coffee, caffè letterario, which is literary cafe, a coffee shop, a coffee house. And they were very important by the way, in 18th century, up to, I don't know, the 60s. Yes, the 60s of the last century. Now it's gone. If you look certain coffee house in Florence, I give, for instance, they were a piece of Italian literature of the 20th century, sitting at the tables. Now it's gone. We're talking about only 50, 60 years ago. Again, this is the answer, Thomas. Why people or intellectual had the time to stay there, sitting there, passing Saturday afternoon, speaking about books, whatever you want, okay? But at the same time, they created something after that. the output was so evident. But nowadays, it's precisely happening the same thing to churches, Freemasonry, blah, blah, blah. Why? Because they have something in common. They are simply not the locomotives of the cultural, esoteric society. They are one of the wagons, and the locomotive is something else. This is very important to keep in mind. And we see the reflections in our democracies when someone, owing whatever you want, can influence greatly. We start to understand, to be unveiled, that can change our society, and they simply want to influence our society globally, everywhere. And the correct word is not it's a danger. The correct expression is not it's a danger or danger. No, it is precisely this is who you are. I mean, when you look at your face in the mirror in the morning, this is you. Like or dislike, this is you. So if you want to change, it's up to you. It's a principle of Freemasonry. To quarry your stone. What does it mean, quarry your stone? It means that look into the mirror, who you are, and do what you want. You can do even nothing. You say, I like what I see. You can so say, so I needed to do nothing. That's a fact. And again, Freemasonry is in crisis for this reason. Everywhere. Youth is approaching. I met plenty of young brethren, it could be my sons, and they clearly said to me certain questions. They say, you answered the question, you are the first one. We are between friends, so frate. So the fact is that you have few people who are qualified. What does it mean by qualified? That you have a PhD? No. That you are who you are? No. That simply have the enthusiasm to understand the meaning of life. This is the fact. And so we are very different because we have different roots, in our lives. Then we can touch, we can get distance. But anyway, each of us is on path to be followed. And this is what is lacking nowadays to young people. I speak to I have a daughter, today she's 27, she's her birthday. And I have two nephews who are 16 and 22. The one, 22 years old, keeps on putting question to me. Why? Because his father, he says so, is incapable to reply. So, as a young man, he's looking for answers to questions. And the first thing I always say is, first of all, use this, your own, and nobody else. If you do something good, it's your merit. If you do something bad, it's your fault, not somebody else. This is a fact. But you have to teach to young people to use, first of all, their own resources. Again, it doesn't need to be a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a teacher, a professor. No, that's a fact. Simply use this. And speaking to people like Azu and Shane, who belong to my generation, Thomas, the responsibility we have is that to show off, at least to young people, that our lives, the years after years we live before you, is not for nothing or in vain. This is the tragedy. We have people of our age or even older who are absolutely saying, what happened? What happened? That's all. Then there is no recipe.
We all walk through the fire so that our children don't have to. Yeah, that's what comes to mind when you speak of that.
So let's see, has anybody else got anything they'd like to ask specifically of Mario regarding the presentation today? Okay. Then,
Okay.
Mario, do you have any closing things you'd like to say?
Simply say thank you. Thank you very much indeed, because I say this in Italian, it's very interesting. Grazie di esistere. It means thank you to exist, which is very important to say in Italian. Very, very impressive to Italian. Grazie di esistere.
That's beautiful,
SRA.
Mario. That's a beautiful saying. Thank you for sharing that, and likewise. I think we're very fortunate in these meetings to meet up with people from all around the world and share such conversations with, to be in good company of good people who have a curious disposition, and thank you very much on behalf of the Metropolitan Study Group, Mario. Thank you.